Good to be here.
Representative, congratulations.
Thank you,
on the
Jim.
pick. Let me start out of the gate right here. Agribusiness, obviously, very important to the Buckeye State. What is the state of today's farm? The recession has obviously hit hard. Still, as we mentioned, 1 in 7 Ohioans employed in farm production, retailing, processor, et cetera. How are the farms in Ohio doing today?
Actually, the farms have been doing fairly good. In Mercer County, the county that it's my home county, we have the third lowest unemployment in the state of Ohio, and agriculture is a big part of that. And farmers have actually come off about 4 good years in a row with commodity prices very good. So the agriculture community has been holding their own through this.
A few months ago, outgoing Senator Voinovich held a summit with farm leaders and representatives from various aspects of farming. So to kind of follow up on the kind of the general question there, are there specific areas within Ohio farming that are struggling more than others? We go 200 crops in this state as an example. Is dairy in worse shape than beef, poultry, chicken, and soy? I mean, are there specific targets within farming that are just struggling more than others?
Well, obviously the pork industry right now is struggling with the closing of the Bob Evans plant here in Ohio last week because we don't produce enough hogs, and when the pork price is low, people just no longer restock their barns, and so the pork industry, the dairy industry has had challenges over the year, and the milk prices have been very low, but a lot of people have gone to organic dairies to kind of counter that, where you can get a higher price for your milk. The poultry industry, eggs have been up and down. Turkeys have been pretty much holding their own, but they're all cyclical. So the one commodity group might be down and the other one might be up. That's why a lot of farmers have multiple species on their farm to be able to counter that.
The department that you'll be overseeing, is there a way to do more of promoting from within? In other words, would it not make sense on a cost basis to have Ohio products sold in Ohio? Would it not just be cheaper?
It would be, and that's one of the jobs that Governor-elect Kasich wants me to do, is promote Ohio agriculture more. And that's one thing I'll be doing, is going to all 88 counties and meeting with their economic development directors and discussing how we can improve production here in the state of Ohio. And also it'd be great to buy Ohio and to try to keep the products local. But these are all challenges we're going to face, and there are many, many challenges out there for agriculture right now.
Gentlemen?
I was going to say director, but director appointee, I guess, technically. One of the jobs you'll have in that new position will be heading the Livestock Care Standards Board. Obviously, it's had some controversy because of the ballot issue that was on and then off and so forth. How much of a struggle is that going to be? Because there's a lot of new standards that have to come out, and you have to be in the seat with the gavel, so to speak, to do that. What are you looking at in that job?
Well, Ellen, I'm looking forward to attending I believe December 7th and January 3rd are the next 2 meetings, and I plan on being in attendance to get up to speed on what's going on. But I was very supportive of the issue 2 and the Livestock Care Standards Board. I believe it should be up to Ohioans to determine the future of livestock production in the state of Ohio. And so they do have their job cut out for them, and I'm looking forward to chairing that. And I understand the subcommittees are getting a lot of their work put together. I believe the veal industry and the euthanasia subcommittees have already come forward with some of their plans, but I'm looking forward to being part of that.
Follow up to that, the outgoing governor and the outgoing director were part of a deal with the Humane Society to follow through on, I think it was 8-point, if I remember correctly, deal that kept a ballot issue off. Do you feel obligated to honor the terms of that deal, or is that now a new ballgame?
It's been very clear from Governor-elect Kasich that our priority is not going to be dealing with out-of-state activists. He's been very clear. Now, having said that, when 7 commodity groups and Farm Bureau and Governor Strickland sign off on it, there are a lot of things that we just are not up to speed on, not being part of the process.
Of course.
And Governor-elect Kasich has instructed me to get more information on that and get that to him to see where we are with that process.
Representative, very quickly, just to kind of follow up on Alan's lead there, part of that was veal crates, part of it was new cage requirements for chickens, no strangulation of farm animals. Those were three of the provisions that I can think of. Have you heard anything from the Farm Bureau? Has there been any whisper that perhaps they would want out of that deal now that we have an incoming Republican governor rather than Ted Strickland?
No, I have not heard any of that. The part of the deal that a lot of us have concerns with were what's grandfathered in. As you know, I was a poultry farmer up until last year, and the poultry farmers can continue to grow. But if Bill buys my farm, can he continue to grow? Or there's just a lot of unknowns that need to be answered, and I'm looking forward to digging into those questions.
John Kasich's already talked a lot about how he feels government is over-regulating business. Can you give us like one clear, down-to-earth example of government over-regulating farmers and the food industry? And if you wanted to change that, could you do that? Could you ease those regulations on your own, or would you need legislators to do it?
You know, that's a good question, and regulatory reform is one of the first things that Governor Kasich's going to do. And a couple of the ag regulations that come to mind have to do with transportation of commodities. For example, I border Indiana, and we have feed trucks that go back and forth from Ohio to Indiana. In Indiana, they can haul 3 tons more of feed than they can in Ohio. There are rendering plants here in Ohio that ship their products down to Cincinnati to get on barges. And they can only put many pounds in a container, where other states they can add, and I don't know the exact amounts, 80,000 pounds versus 60,000, and those numbers aren't right. But so we have an uncompetitive advantage to neighboring states, and that's what we really want to do, is try to be at least competitive with surrounding states, and that's part of the regulatory reform. And a couple years ago, Senator Faber and I, and Senator Niehaus, and Representative Goyle, and Senator Cafaro, and State Representative Reinhardt traveled the state, listening to the needs and concerns of small businesses, large businesses, mom and pop businesses, and agricultural businesses. And there are somewhere between 20 and 30,000 regulations in the state of Ohio, and many of them are duplicated, antiquated, just downright silly. And hopefully this regulatory reform process will review them all, but help the agriculture industry and all small business.
All right, Representative, let me ask you, there's been tremendous pressure to do something regarding farming methods in Ohio. We've seen 16 state parks this year kind of go on alert because of toxic algae. Experts say factory farms create 100 tons of fecal matter a day that runs in the water supply. Is there any kind of solution, or is there a goal of yours to try to figure out how to balance the situation if indeed this is contributing to a problem that Ohioans are seeing at state parks all across the state, and St. Mary's in particular comes to mind?
Well, you know, Jim, Grand Lake St. Mary's is in my district, and that's the reason that we made this announcement on the lake campus on the shores of Grand Lake St. Mary's. One, Mercer County is the #1 ag county in the state of Ohio with a lot of concentrated livestock. And two, Grand Lake St. Mary's was the first and the worst probably of all the inland lakes that had an issue. And I believe there were 20 inland lakes that had the blue-green algae issue, and a few of them didn't have agriculture around them at all. So it was kind of an unusual year for this. But nutrient runoff is one of the main causes, high loads of phosphorus. And so we're asking farmers, no matter how big you are, you know, when you say the word industrial farm or factory farm, most of the farms in that watershed are very small farms, very small farms. And there's practices they've been doing for many, many years. But they've increased the size of animals, they've increased the amount of animals they've had over the years. And maybe the farmland hasn't increased, but the animals production has. And so we're going to have to look at farmers, no matter what size, to have a plan what they do with those nutrients, so they stay on their soils and not get in the creeks and the rivers that feed Grand Lake St. Mary's or feed all the inland lakes. And so there are some things coming out. ODNR, which oversees the smaller farms, is designating Grand Lake St. Mary's watershed a degraded watershed or a challenged watershed. I forget what the word is, but there'll be some rules that they'll have to apply by now, like hauling their manure during certain time periods. I think December 2nd to March 2nd or December 15th to March 2nd, and then also having storage enough to get them through different time periods. But it's not necessarily the large farms.
Gotcha.
You've already suggested that the Agriculture Department perhaps be folded into some other government agencies in a consolidation move. Would that mean some current functions of the Agriculture Department be dropped or weakened?
Bill, I'm sure you're referring to House Bill 25.
Well, the government consolidation.
Yes, and right now, House Bill 25 is a bill that I believe was introduced 2 years ago, and obviously I think it got one hearing, but it was a show of strength of a lot of legislators. I think there were 35 or 36 of us that signed on to it that wants to reduce the size of government. Now, we're not downplaying any agency or saying these agencies aren't as important. We just think that Governor-elect Kasich and Governor Strickland have 24 agencies reporting to them. President Obama has 13. So the size of Ohio's government is huge, and we just think that would be a good thing to start, and that we could save money and we could spend our time a lot better than reporting with a bunch of agencies.
But would some actual functions be downsized themselves?
No, I don't know. The Department of Agriculture is mostly regulatory. And so food safety and animal safety is #1 priority. And so maybe there would be a situation where other agencies have regulatory agencies have a perfect fit to have the regulatory agencies sort of together. Maybe EPA, ODNR have certain parts or divisions that would fit into the Department of Agriculture or a bigger department or a single department. So I think it's more of looking at combining maybe regulatory agencies and different functions.
State Democratic Party immediately jumped in within an hour after your nomination or the announcement saying that you wanted to implode the very agency.
I know that. Well, but it's funny how House Bill 25, I think, was introduced by Petro 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I believe it got the support of all the newspapers in the state of Ohio, but now for some reason is not as popular. But I think we, as any business, we need to look at the business plan we have and the model and reduce the size of government. I believe we have close to 60,000 employees in the state of Ohio, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we're going to have to reel it in because we're going to have a huge, as you know, an $8 billion budget deficit. So
I know as a former poultry farmer, you must be concerned about salmonella, and we recently had another incident at one of Ohio farms on that. Where are you on the cage-free versus the battery cage, the small cages that most chickens are in? Where are you on that, and how, as a farmer, and then is your position going to be any different when you take over the hot seat in January?
Well, coming from a poultry farm that has been in business since 1941 or 2, and going from cage-free to birds grown in barns, to birds grown in single-deck cages, to birds grown in battery cages, I have seen all of it. And the industry has great standards for animal health. When our birds were on range-free, in the wintertime they froze to the ground. In the summertime they suffocated. They were out in the elements, and they were fair game for any kind of animals. When they're in a controlled environment, the temperature is 70 degrees year-round. Water and feed is in front of them. If you put 2 chickens out on a range, they will huddle. I mean, it could be a 40-acre range. It doesn't matter. They like to huddle. And
the
so
things we learn on this show,
right.
you know.
But to my opinion, I think there's room for everyone. There are people that the organics. That's a great niche market. Free range, if you want to pay higher prices for your product, that's fine. But we don't have enough ranges in the state of Ohio to grow enough eggs for the demand of our nation, our country,